Hey there, Internet friends. Welcome to That D Plus Show. Class is in session for the only show from that nerdy site that lets you know what kind of quality to expect right from the name. I'm your host, Trevor Starkey, and each week I sit down with guests to talk about a Disney Plus offering of their choosing. The show is made possible entirely by the support of our patrons over at patreon.com/thatnerdysite, so if you like the show and you can support us over there, we would definitely appreciate it. But if you can't, no big deal. The fact that you're listening is awesome, and of course we would love it if you like, subscribe, rate, review the podcast, and share it with your friends. Joining me today, we have Michael Fitzgerald, aka Sigh of the Torrent, on Twitter. How you doing, Michael?
I'm doing well. Just enjoying the nice weather we have up in New England today, so that's beautiful.
Very nice. Yeah, just kind of hanging in there with everything going on in the world. We were talking a little bit about that before we started
Yeah,
recording the
it's
Discord.
it's an interesting time. Thank God for streaming services and lots of things to watch.
Indeed, yeah. It's even if I'm not watching Disney Plus stuff, I got Netflix stuff that's taking my my time, or Hulu or whatever. In addition to all the video games and all that stuff. So for people who don't know you, Michael, tell us a little bit about yourself, kind of where we might know you from the community and all that fun stuff.
I was lucky enough once Kind of Funny became Kind of Funny and they split off to win the passes the first year they went to PAX East as Kind of Funny. Um,
Oh,
that was
I
my
remember
first
that. Yeah.
that was my first real introduction to the community and meeting a lot of people. And I personally got called out by Greg to like, hey, I better meet you here because you won the passes. So that's where I got to meet all the Kind of Funny guys, and from there just fell into this culture even more and very much understanding what it means to be a best friend. For Kind of Funny Live 2, me and my wife at the time flew out to California. It was the first time I ever been out to California to go to Kind of Funny Live 2, which was just
Mm-hmm.
fantastic, meeting everybody in person. That's how I got to meet. I met you. I met Zyger. I met Amy Gills, um, Jenna, and Jeremy from Crave Snow, which I
Yep.
still
Okay.
get to see. Now I still get to talk to these people. I went back a few years ago for the last pack PSX, and
Mm-hmm.
Jeremy and Jenna picked me up and hung out with me the entire time. It's very good.
Awesome.
And now PAX East has been my tradition every year since then that I go there and see everybody that I
Yeah.
get to see.
Yeah, I always get to see you there, and yeah, I remember like the because your Twitter photo is still when we did the IGN tour at
Yep.
one of those Kind of Funny lives. I remember that because you're wearing one of the very like low sell through shirts that Kind of Funny did, because Kind of Funny never sells many when they do Greg's face on them.
Yep.
But you have that one on. I always remember that and being like, nice. Um, well, very cool. Well, thank you for joining me today, and thank you for pitching the movie that we're going to talk about today. We talked about it a little bit when I ran into you at the What's Good party at PAX, but you wanted to talk today about Tron Legacy.
I do.
So so tell me a little bit about why you picked Tron Legacy here.
I picked Tron Legacy over the original Tron because this is the one I actually got to see in theaters.
Uh huh.
Growing up, I'm a middle child. I have an older brother 7 years older than me and a younger 5. So like there's a good age gap. And my brother was huge into Tron, so we watched it all the time in the house. So to see, and it's something I've always grown up on. I didn't realize it was more niche than I thought it was
Uh huh.
because like
Yeah.
my brother was so into it. Then finding out later, a lot of people are like, "Oh, it didn't do well, and Disney will probably never make another one." Until they decided to do Tron Legacy, which was I love the movie. I watch it all the time. Probably about at least once or twice a year. I'll still pop it in and watch it. Now it's on the streaming service, which is even better. But it's just something about that movie. Just always it reminds me of my older brother and everything from my childhood. And now to see it become even more blown up to the fact of what it's influenced. I was watching earlier today the pop culture on Disney Plus, which has a whole thing about it where they pull out the old props and talk about how they made the movie. And to see what it was then to what it is now is fantastic. And the fact that Disney is bringing the Tron ride to Orlando, hopefully we get a new movie or something, because I can't see why not, especially with Disney Plus, and then be like, we can put a bunch of stuff here now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting one for me because my personal history with Tron was like prior to this movie coming out. I knew the name of Tron, but I don't think I'd ever actually seen the film. And so the best, like, my point of reference for Tron was Kingdom Hearts 2 when they go to the Tron world in that game. And like I knew elements of Tron from like pop culture because like I think famously Moses from South Park is very much based off of the kind of big kind of bad of Tron. But yeah, when Tron Legacy came out, I remember vividly going and seeing it with a bunch of my coworkers at the time. I was working at a solar company, and we decided as like a team building thing for the holidays that year. I think to go and see it, and like we went maybe opening weekend or something like that, and we like because of how many of us there were and how late we bought the tickets, we were having to sit like front row for a giant 3D screening, which was cool, but also like, oh, this is not the optimal way to experience this. But at the same time, like the 3D was done so well in it that it was like, okay, this is definitely the kind of movie you want to see in 3D, just maybe not from the front row of the theater. But yeah, I didn't end up actually watching the original Tron until after seeing Tron Legacy. So going back and rewatching it now for this show, I was like, okay, I have a little better reference point on the original Tron. But I'm sure, given it sounds like your upbringing and how frequently you were watching it growing up, you probably get way more of like the little throwbacks and references and stuff here and there throughout the film. That I catch a couple of them, and I get like some of the like design upgrades from the original film from the 80s. But yeah, I'm sure for somebody who grew up with it more, it probably is much more resonant with you, right?
Yeah, and I was mentioning the pop culture again. To find out how they actually did some of those shots is utterly amazing for the technology and what they had then. And just like my girlfriend was watching me, and she's never seen even one of them until we were to this, and she's like, "Holy crap, that is like a glow up." So the stuff that
Yeah.
how it looked in the '81 to now is just utterly insane. And you mentioned Kingdom Hearts. My only disappointment with that is that they brought Tron Legacy to the Dream Drop, and I was like, "Oh, I really was hoping it was going to be in Kingdom Hearts 3." But it's still great. Like all the Tron
Hmm.
stuff is still fantastic to play, and seeing it, and I was like, I can't believe I'm playing this in a video game about a movie about a video game. It's just it all just keeps
Yeah.
coming around.
Yeah. Well, very cool, and very, very excellent pick to kind of sit down and look at for this. So a little bit of history lesson for Tron Legacy. It was originally released December 17th, 2010. Other notable releases here in December 2010, you had Black Swan kicking things off at the beginning of the month with coming out on December 3rd. You had the third movie in the Chronicles of Narnia series, The Voyage of the Dawn Treader, that kind of put an end to that series of films after kind of continually declining returns. You had right here alongside Tron Legacy, you had Yogi Bear. You also had True Grit, which also features Jeff Bridges here, came out a week later. And you also had, this is where we got the film Gulliver's Travels with Jack Black playing that kind of titular character. So yeah, that was your December 2010 movies that Tron Legacy here came out alongside. The runtime for the film was 2 hours and 7 minutes, and in the Disney timeline of things, I pulled this up while we were talking. We're looking at this kind of fell between this in terms of live-action Disney films. This fell between The Sorcerer's Apprentice in July of 2010, and then Pirates of the Caribbean on Stranger Tides in May of 2011. It's kind of a couple of the big notable Disney films that this fell between live action wise.
That's an interesting time period of live movies.
Yeah, and one of the things that we'll talk about a little bit more later on is clearly like one of the big things they were touting for this, in addition to like the whole 3D nature of it, was how they de-aged Jeff Bridges for the film. And it's one of the first instances we were really getting of that kind of technology and utilizing that technology that has, I think, been it's a little rough around the edges in this, going back and looking at it, but seeing how Disney has kind of evolved and built on that for all of the Marvel films and how we've seen it utilized in some of those pictures, I think is like we wouldn't have had those kinds of elements in some of the later Marvel films without what they were trying to do here in Tron Legacy. So it It was very important, I think, in how it kind of set the stage for what would come later down the line. The who's who of the film, talking about the roll call, we have the director Joseph Kosinski. He directed prior to this the famous Gears of War Mad World trailer back in 2006. But this was his first feature film debut. That jumped out at me as like, holy crap, that is crazy. He went on to direct Oblivion, which I believe was a movie with Tom Cruise in 2013, and is directing the upcoming Top Gun Maverick. So it's interesting that this guy has kind of like found a spot for him to be the I'm gonna direct a sequel of like an 80s film 20 years later. Joseph Kosinski there. And then the writers were Edward Kitsis and Adam Horowitz. They did the screenplay together. They are a couple of writing partners that were also behind about 20 episodes of Lost. And then they went on to do 4 episodes of the Tron Uprising, I believe, animated series. And they were also the creators of the TV show Once Upon a Time and its related spin-offs for ABC. So that's kind of the director-writers. And then for the starring, picking out some of the highlight actors of the film, obviously you have Jeff Bridges here playing Kevin Flynn and Clue. Notably for this, he was in Tron in 1982, and then obviously he went on to gain a lot of fame in something like The Big Lebowski in 98. He was Obadiah Stane in Iron Man in 2008. Shortly after this one came out, or actually probably before this one came out, he was in True Grit in 2010, and then most recently he did Bad Times at the El Royale. You have Garrett Hedlund playing Sam Flynn, who had done Aragon back in 2006. I remember at least the name of that book series. I never ended up seeing like the film adaptation of it. But,
don't watch it. It's not good.
Yeah,
as someone who loves those books,
that
imagine. Movie was not good, and the writer who wrote the books has gone on record saying like, "Yeah, I had no say in that. Sorry."
Yeah. That seems to often be the case. I think we encountered that on this show in particular back when we talked about the Percy Jackson series as well. The writer of the books was not at all happy with how the film adaptation handled the material. But Garrett Hedlund also would go on to do Inside Llewyn Davis, Llewyn Davis, in 2013, and then he was Hook in Pan in 2015, which is one of the myriad of Peter Pan remake stories that we got in the last decade or so. You have Olivia Wilde here playing Cora, who had done the OC and House prior to this, as well as the film Year One. And then she went on to do Cowboys and Aliens, and most recently she directed 2019's Booksmart, so she's heading into that realm. You have Bruce Boxleitner playing Alan Bradley in Tron, reprising his role from the original Tron film. He was also in Babylon 5, and he reprised his role back in the Kingdom Hearts games. And recently he's been playing President Baker on the CW series Supergirl. You have James Frain in there as Jarvis, kind of Clue's like lackey right-hand man, who I recognized as a guy who went to school for theater. He was in Julie Taymor's Titus, which is a kind of her adaptation of the Shakespeare play Titus Andronicus. He was also in The Tudors, and most recently he's been in Gotham as well as Star Trek Discovery. He's Sarek in Star Trek Discovery. And then rounding out the cast for the purposes of this, you have Michael Sheen, who plays Castor/Zeus, who prior to this had done Frost Nixon, as well as the Twilight Saga New Moon. And then he has since gone on to do Masters of Sex and Good Omens, and was recently in Dolittle, and was like, as somebody who saw that in theaters before all the theaters started shutting down, he was like the one mildly decent thing about the film, because he was the guy who knew what kind of film he was in. But God, that film was bad. So do not check out Dolittle. But Michael Sheen was fine in it. A little bit of trivia for us. Early drafts of the script did not feature a role for Alan Bradley. It was only after public outcry by Bruce Boxleitner and the fans of the original film that Bradley was added to the script. His performance proved so popular that he went on to make public appearances as Alan Bradley to promote the film, and returned to play the role of Tron in Tron Uprising 2012. And I remember, so I was a big fan of the TV series Chuck. And I guess one of my other like Tron touchstones was when Bruce Boxleitner was like a cameo on that for a couple episodes, and I remember like following the show and the story behind the show and stuff, and so people were like very excited to have Tron on Chuck, and so that was like how I knew of him prior to this. So I remember that kind of like campaign to get him involved in the soft reboot of the film.
Yeah, I'm very surprised by that. Like that was something when you sent me that I was like, wow, I didn't know that he was not originally, and I can't imagine this film without him.
Yeah, like trying to think about that, it is because he is very much the like inciting incident to get Sam into the world, and I my guess would be that maybe it was somebody else that was like fulfilling that role, who was like either on the board, or maybe it was like a family member or something that got a page and basically sent him down the path, because he really is only in the beginning and the end of the film there. So I could see that they could have written around that, but then once they got him on board, I think they utilized him very well and very appropriately from a storytelling standpoint. Absolutely. When standing over the board game with black and white stones, Cora mentions to Sam Flynn that she rarely beats Kevin at it. The board game is in fact Go, a game that is notoriously difficult for computer programs to play well. Unlike chess, where computers are able to beat the world's best human players, when the movie was filmed, the best Go computer programs were only able to manage to reach an intermediate amateur level, which explains why Cora, being a computer program, would rarely be able to beat Kevin Flynn. That was something I found interesting, in particular because I also read some like a bit recently for my old job, actually, a book that was like talking about machine learning and how like we're teaching computers to teach themselves stuff, and one of the highlights they brought up was the fact that like nowadays computers are getting much better at playing Go because they're analyzing like strategies of millions of people or something like that and trying to come up with the best strategies that they can play. So but for something 10 years ago, absolutely this would have made sense that Go was just it was tougher for the computers to beat. Obviously, one of the big cameos of the film, you have Daft Punk there spinning the tunes at the End of Line Club with their trademark helmets, so they fit right on in this world. And they also, of course, they were the composers for the soundtrack of the film. At the time, this was the most expensive film ever made by a first-time director, with production budget of about $170 million. It has since been surpassed by Rupert Sanders on Snow White and the Huntsman, and as well as Carl Eric Rinch on 47 Ronin. Bob Peterson also surpassed this with Pixar's Up, which was actually a year or two before Tron here, but he shared directing credit on that with Pete Docter. So I guess this was the most expensive film for a first-time solo director at the time when this came out, and that was again one of those things that like just jumped out at me, was like the faith that Disney had in this guy and his vision to put $170 million behind a long dormant franchise that, as you kind of touched on, like people didn't really expect to be able to revive or bring back from the dead. But this guy with only that admittedly very well-renowned Mad World commercial to his name, really, the fact that they gave him like the keys to the castle on this really stood out at me as somebody like as a first-time director. The wardrobe budget for the film was $13 million. One custom suit alone for the racers cost $60,000. The skin-tight electric suits worn were actually fitted with embedded light strips, eliminating the need for any kind of effects modifications in post-production. So that was one of the cool little aspects of the film, because one of the things I love about this film is how it feels real and doesn't need a lot of the effects on the characters themselves, and so they could use the effects really to capitalize on the world around them. To play the computer program Clue, Jeff Bridges' face was de-aged with the same technology used in The Curious Case of Benjamin Button from 2008 to age Brad Pitt. Thus, in his role as Flynn, Bridges appears to be his actual age of 61, but as Clue, a program written back in the 1980s, he looks like he's in his 30s, because programs don't age. Kevin Flynn sets down a metallic polyhedron on the fireplace mantle. Later, when Clue comes to his house, he picks up the same metallic polyhedron. This is a direct homage to Tron and the bit that assisted both the original Clue and Flynn in that film. Cameo from Steven Lisberger, the producer of this film and director of the original Tron. He was the bartender at the End of Line Club. Cillian Murphy's character, Edward Dillinger II, is meant to be the son of Edward Dillinger, the primary antagonist of the first film, who stole credit for creating Kevin Flynn's video games. He appears only in the one scene, and his uncredited appearance is meant to hint at a possible sequel, which was at one point in the works but never materialized. And speaking of said sequel, you have Tron Legacy writers Edward Kitsis and Adam Horowitz were already writing a screenplay for a third entry before this film was even released, but Disney reportedly chose to do sequels in the Star Wars and Marvel franchises instead because they had better box office potential. One of the things that always jumped out at me when I saw this was like, is that Cillian Murphy? And then like he's not in the credits anywhere, so it was just kind of one of those like, oh, okay, he was gonna be out there or introduced and teased for a sequel, but the fact that they don't kind of like immediately replace the storyline or have him kind of being the new bad guy from the original, I thought was just kind of I could see how he's being set up as doing that in a follow-up that they did not have a chance to explore here.
Before this came on Disney Plus, I have the Blu-ray, and they have a whole 10-minute thing, which you can find it in pieces on YouTube, Tron the Next Day, and they talk about like what would have happened potentially for a sequel and kind of set it up more. And he has a little part in there that they talk about of him like pretty much doing what the bad guy for the first one is trying to take over the company again. So
yeah,
that was one of those. Like I had to pull out the DVD to watch that today because I was like, oh, I thought the scene was in there, but I haven't watched it in quite some time.
Yeah, you can see that a third movie would basically probably feature Sam versus him, with Cora kind of being a deciding factor in making sure that NCOM stays kind of with them. Cool. So let's dive right on in. How does this film from only about 10 years ago, how do you think it holds up, and what did you think about it?
Visually, it still looks fantastic. I think you touched on earlier, one of the things that does still look rough is the DeAging on Jeff Bridges. Mm-hmm. But, I mean, that's to be expected with a technology that was new then. And it still has sometimes issues now depending on the person and the budget. Yep,
absolutely. Yeah, for me, that's really the only thing that kind of jumped out at me. Because I love everything in the Tron world, and the only change I would have really tried to make it a more timeless film like that would be when they do the kind of opening scene and they de-age Jeff Bridges as Kevin, I would have kept him like entirely in shadow or kept his back to us or something so that you don't see the rough edges of the technology there.
Yeah, I don't
but
think
you still get the sense that it's
you see Clue for the first time, because then you'll be like, oh my god, it's Jeff Bridges, and he's still and then that scene would have resonated a bit more than like, no, we've already seen him, and that kind of wouldn't make sense that he'd still be the same from 30 years ago.
And then the other tweak I would make to try and make that work better with everybody else in Tron or in the grid is I would have given every character in there some kind of similar sheen, so that they all share kind of that digital feel, as opposed to one digitally de-aged character and then a whole bunch of clearly humans just kind of walking around as wackily dressed up as they might be, with Jarvis and his whole thing that he's got going on, or Michael Sheen's character and his bold white hair and all that stuff. But the fact that like he looks fake compared to everybody else in that world, I just wish everybody else in that world looked fake as well, I guess, to match the aesthetic of that design. But other than that, I get that would have ballooned up the budget even more to try and add digital effects on every single person in the film. So I totally understand them not wanting to go that route. But that's, looking back at it, that's kind of like how I think I could have resolved the issue or tried to help justify it a little bit. Because yeah, it makes sense that Clue doesn't look completely right because he is a program. But when all of the other programs do look like humans, it's like, it doesn't quite track anymore.
Yeah.
But yeah, so yeah, let's. So tell me, as kind of the certainly the bigger fan of the series, tell me some of your favorite moments of Tron Legacy here.
The first time he encounters his dad, actually Jeff Bridges, you see it, is like
Mm-hmm.
that was great to see him again back in this world. That's why also like not having Alan Bradley in this film would have also been weird to me because like all right, the only person from the original Tron that came over again was him. Would have been weird,
Yeah. Yeah.
but like seeing the light cycles and the solar glider and everything just 1,000 times looking better than they did in the
Mm-hmm.
80s just blew my mind as like wow, this is what we can do now with computers. It's almost like like the same thing of playing video games from back in the day to now, and it's like what we imagine it to be to what it can actually be. Like the closest now is probably Final Fantasy VII, the remake of how stuff
Mm-hmm.
was then to how it looks now, and just be blown away by seeing the same thing but different.
Yeah, that's actually a great comparison. Yeah, because yeah, I certainly knew again the iconography of the light cycles and stuff like that from the original Tron, being whether or not it was from like snippets I had seen from the original film or just how it had been how those had kind of been populated through the rest of pop culture, in stuff like The Simpsons. So seeing the light cycle sequence in particular here and how they've evolved it and how instead of everything being like solely on angles, everything is has a much more fluid feel to it, in this time around. And again, seeing this back and thinking back to seeing it in the theaters where this was one of those rare films that wasn't, hey, we're going to shoot the film and then we're going to make it 3D after the fact. It was, we're making this film as a 3D film, as intended as a 3D film. And so seeing it with the 3D effects on sequences like that was incredibly like cool and satisfying and intense, but also like immersed you in that world. And so it was really cool to see how they kind of evolved on those designs. Especially compared to if you go back and look at the original 80s stuff, it was like, oh yeah, it is very much that Final Fantasy VII comparison that you're talking about. If you try and go back to the 97 version, you got them polygonal characters that look a little rough around the edges, but compared to 2020, Cloud and Barrett and Tifa and Aerith and all that, they're looking real sharp, and you get kind of that same glow up effectively here.
This is probably one of the few movies I wish I actually probably the only movie I wish I did have a 3D capable TV to watch it again in 3D because of how well it worked for what it was.
Yeah, yeah. The to the point you were mentioning there of seeing Jeff Bridges kind of back in the film, or like in his, one of the things I love about the film, in addition that scene in particular is a very nice heartwarming scene where you have these characters seeing each other for the first time in 20 years. But one of the things I really loved was that they just, again, having not knowing anything really about the original Tron, coming into it the first time, and then even still not knowing the original Tron well enough, just seeing how they just kind of let Jeff Bridges be Jeff Bridges, in his Zen-like portrayal of Kevin Flynn here, and how basically all roads lead to the dude. I really kind of enjoyed the feel of how he portrays the character in here, and it's one of those, like, I don't know, you can maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but like the original Kevin Flynn from the original Tron didn't seem as hippie-ish, for lack of a better term, as Jeff Bridges does in this film. Am I misreading that, or
No,
was he kind of always
you've nailed
a
it on
little
the
out
head,
there?
but I think that's the beautiful part of it, and the fact that they still have Clue being his version of himself from the 80s and talking about
Mm-hmm.
like all this time in isolation, what really was important versus what he thought was important. Because the entire the whole about it is he thought at the end this was going to change the world, which he still
Mm-hmm.
believes, but at the end of the day, his son and the family and people he cared about were way more important. But he didn't know that then, but he knows it now. So he's got the hippie thing works completely for it in a way that just makes the first one even that much better to go back and watch.
Yeah. And then, I think going back to kind of the comments we had about Bruce Boxleitner. Obviously, Tron is featured in this film. We just don't know it's Tron for most of it. But I think that, like, I wonder if that was always the case, or if they would have kept that as was it Risner, is the antagonist kind of Tron character. I wonder if he would have been revealed as Tron at the end, and if so, how they would have done that without Bruce Boxleitner. Really was kind of so.
I would love
but
to see
it
if
seems
they
like they kind of had the framework of him
somewhere and see what that actual plan was.
Yeah,
because you can't have Tron without Tron. So.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, that was one of the weird things going back and just being like, yeah, Tron really isn't a big role in this, and given his apparent demise at the end of the film, admittedly I haven't watched through Uprising, so maybe you, if you have, you can shed a little bit of light on there. But it is one of those, like, what would the third film have looked like, because it obviously would have kept the Tron name to keep the branding and all that stuff, but would Tron have even been in it if we see Tron kind of fall into the sea at the end of this?
Well, I mean,
like, did
even
he survive
after
that?
His dad basically reboots the entire server when he reconnects with Lou, so we don't know anything of what happened after that.
Yeah, that's very true. So yeah, that was one of those. I was like, yeah, it's interesting, because there are elements of the film that make me feel like they knew they weren't going to have a third one, and then there are elements that make me feel like, oh, they were leaving the door open for a third one.
Also, watching them go from using frisbees in the original to them being like full on like metal blade death machines.
Yeah,
oh, that's awesome. And the first time Rensler starts dual wielding them, I was like, oh yeah, this is great.
Yeah, that reminds me. There's a game in the PlayStation VR Worlds demo, or not demo disc, but like it was basically a series of tech demos, effectively, that came with PlayStation VR, and one of them is feels so much like that, but it's Pong, but you're playing with your head, and you kind of spin the ball, and it feels, when you're playing it, like you're in the Disc Wars kind of thing, just using a ball bouncing off of your head instead of like throwing the disc around. But like the whole environment around you very much evoked that scene from this film, and I remember playing that, which was easily like the best part of that VR Worlds disc, and just one of the like most pure VR games I've played, and thinking like, oh yeah, like a Tron PlayStation VR game would be really, really cool if you had the disc war kind of stuff, if you had like the light cycles that you were kind of like racing around in, and even the like light jets at the end kind of thing.
Well, the Tron Evolution video game they had was great, but it was well, I wouldn't say great. It was decent.
It was what it was for the time,
and it was pretty much the prequel to Tron Legacy. So seeing like them talking and going through and the purge of the ISOs and everything, I was like, oh, not an easy platinum. Don't have the platinum for it. Wish I did, but I was like, there were parts in there I'm like, nope, that's not happening.
Fair, very fair. So yeah, let's talk about other favorite moments or scenes. So we kind of touched on a little bit, kind of the reunion of Sam and Kevin there. It was a nice little like heartfelt father-son moment. And I like, one of the things I liked was kind of the initial reveal and tease of Clue, because obviously he's introduced as a masked figure. We don't know who he is. We just know he's kind of like the bad overseer guy. And then when it's revealed that that's Clue and Jeff Bridges' character, and looks like DeAging Jeff Bridges, I thought it was like a cool reveal within the world, and I totally get why Sam would like look at that and think like, I mean, I don't know how people age in this world, so is this really my dad? And he kind of plays along with it for a little bit. That was a nice thing. And then obviously the reveal at the end of Rinsler as Tron kind of thing, I thought was I thought it was a cleverly handled little bit where it adds, upon a reviewing, it adds like more pathos to what's going on with that character. That we, originally just see as kind of a, faceless antagonist. I like that, like, it's Tron deep down. He's just been corrupted. So yeah, how about you? Any other favorite moments or scenes you want to highlight?
I actually really liked Michael Sheen in this movie. I'm not 100% on this because I read it a while ago, but I'm I remember when the chance came up to play it, he was so excited. He's like, "I'll do it for free." Like Tron
Yeah.
meant a lot to him, and to see him play it. I mean, he's a fantastic actor in pretty much everything he
Uh-huh.
touches. I mean, he made Twilight decent, so
Yeah, there was a bit of trivia that I didn't pull in for this that I looked at, but yeah, on IMDb, there's basically something that was Michael Sheen was like beloved or loved the original Tron so much that he would have done anything for it, and his representation actually kind of had to intervene so that he didn't like work for less than he was owed to do the film. So yeah, they basically like his management kind of jumped in and was like, hey, we need to make sure we take this call and not Michael, because Michael will take it for almost nothing, and then we won't get our cut of the of his fees, basically. So yeah, it was a cute little like. And then similarly, I think Daft Punk were also super fans of the original Tron, and Joseph Kaczynski, the director, basically talked about how when he interviewed with them about them coming on and doing the score, he talks about how it felt like he was really the one being interviewed because they wanted to make sure that his vision for what Tron was going to look like respected and honored the original, because they had such a deep affinity to it as well. So
and
I love that really like all three of those parties are sitting there in that scene
and
together
they
at the
did
end of the line.
fantastic. Like I've never
Yeah.
been a person that's not my type of music. I respect it, but like
Hmm.
this entire score by them is start to finish fantastic. Everything they
Yeah.
did with it, I was like, it fits. It's exactly what you would imagine in that world. Like
Hmm.
the fact that they had at Comic Con the crowd chant for Rinsler and the game,
Hmm.
to have them in the movie was just like awesome and not heard of. You don't People don't do that. Like, hey, we're gonna take this
Yeah.
entire crowd and we're gonna bottle your audio and actually put it in our movie.
Hmm.
Of all people who are super excited about this franchise and what may potentially come from it.
Yeah, that was another element that I saw in the trivia was this was, and I imagine there are probably films that have come and gone since that can also tout this accolade, but this was the first film that had been basically previewed and had panels at 3 consecutive Comic Cons before it was released, because of just the from the time of like announcement to when it finally got released. And I remember at one of those Comic Cons, they basically did a mock up of Flynns Arcade and had people go watch either the full film or like the first 30 minutes of the film, like directly from the panel. It was like, hey, everybody, come across the street. We've got Flynns Arcade up, and come see, the beginning of the movie. And I thought, like, I remember seeing, like, reading IGN stories coming out of this and being like, I don't know anything about this Tron movie, but that's cool that
It's so
they.
awesome. The best thing I got is a Flynn Lives T-shirt because I needed one, so I found one online.
Nice. Yeah. So yeah, that was, and like it's weird because like one of my best friends growing up is his last name is Flynn, and so even though none of us I think really like knew or watched Tron, like he still got that as like a reference point for him. And now I believe last I checked, he was like managing a GameStop. So I don't know if he's still doing it with everything that's going on in the world, but he is innately tied to games as well. I'm sure he continues to get it there in his GameStop manager life, references to his last name being Flynn. And I like even the Flynn's Arcade scene. I like because I like that like going that feeling of going back in time of like this place clearly hasn't been touched since Kevin disappeared.
And to just
They
throw
basically just
Journey
kind
in
of,
there right off the, I was like, yep,
yeah,
awesome. Just
yeah. Journey's in there. I love like when he's going down into the kind of hidden room, you can just hear like the thumping of music, and I'm like, oh, this is clearly Sweet Dreams because you can just hear that. But even just the way it's mixed, like you can immediately recognize the song, but also like it sounds like you're hearing it through a cavernous wall, and you're only hearing like the bass line of it, and just the way they mix that, I thought was like, yeah, this feels exactly how it would if you were sitting there at the bottom of these stairs with him coming down. Like you're hearing exactly what he's hearing, and it's still recognizable just because of how profoundly like identifiable that like initial bass line and soundtrack is to that song. So it's like, yeah, very cool. Yeah, and it very much is. gone back and watched the original Tron since, I can watch this now and be like, oh, yeah, okay, I recognize now the laser. So I imagine somebody who like loved the original was like, oh, this is totally what's going to happen, and it's like that Honey I Shrunk the Kids moment basically, and almost looks exactly like the Honey I Shrunk the Kids laser too. But yeah, I thought, and then just how they immediately throw him into the digital world, and he's fish out of the water,
walking out of a Flynns Arcade in the digital world. Like, just he recreated everything he did from home in there, and then it just balloons into this metropolis of technology. It's like, holy crap! Everything just looks amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. And then like the I don't know the ship names, but the one that looks like it's out of asteroids or something like that, or I guess Space Invaders. I love like that coming down, scooping him up, and then you see like the wide shot of it flying back up. You see like the tank driving on the ground below and stuff, and just immediately being able to recognize those as like the evolution of those original designs from the 80s. So still like paying homage to them while also recognizing like, hey, yeah, it wouldn't really make sense, the form factor of this, and in other places we're gonna make things more fluid and stuff with like the light cycles, but for these things that are really only going to be in like these little snippets of the movie, we're going to go ahead and kind of keep those more blockier aesthetics, but they're still going to look friggin' amazing as a result. Any other highlights or anything else you want to celebrate here?
Cora coming in when he's about to be like potentially executed, we don't know, or taken up to see Clue because he's realized he's a user, and just seeing like we all at this point all we ever saw was the light cycles and the fly things, to come in as like a full like four-wheeler tank basically, and just be like, yep, I'm just gonna snag you and we're out of here, and knowing that like they can't leave the grid because they don't have the technology to, which is amazing that like no one thought to build that at the time. It's like, oh no, they can't go out there, we're good.
Yeah.
Just watch.
Even that whole the light cycles sequence, like in its entirety, I think was just really cool. In addition to like all of the design upgrades and stuff, but just the way they shoot the action in there, and you immediately get that the stakes for Sam's team are dire because
and completely stacked against
team.
Them. Like, hey, you have like smaller motorcycles that are not as quick. And I love when he grabs it and he's like, what am I supposed to do with this? And he pretends to like fight with a sword. And the guys go, I'll tell you one thing, not that.
not that. Yeah. And then obviously we had that like intro sequence to set him up as, driving a Bugatti and racing around and outrunning the cops and stuff in the real world. So it makes perfect sense that like light cycle is absolutely where he's going to have a chance to shine. And I love how they play with the levels of the design of it. I love, and this goes back to the discourse thing as well, the design of people getting de-resed through the disc being slashed at them or stuff like that. And here you have that like tragic shot of like the guy holding his hand out for Sam to give him the light cycle, and he gets like just shattered right in front of Sam.
There's always pixelated glass falling, and it just sounds like what you would imagine something like that being like.
Yeah. And even the transformation of the little bar into the light cycle around them, and how he can have kind of like one in his pocket so he has a spare when he needs it, I thought was just a really cool aesthetic, and how he uses kind of like teamwork with the one sole survivor on his team there for a little bit to take out a couple of the other guys, and even gets like the better of Clue and Rinsler a little bit there before they kind of like cheat to kind of get back in, and then Cora comes in and kind of saves the day. Really cool, kind of like just a great sequence all around. Again, like it was amazing seeing it in 3D back at the time. So yeah, it's definitely one of those that like if I ever have a 3D TV, this is one I would invest in getting the 3D quality for to have it. But even seeing it in kind of like just standard def or high def nowadays, it still looks really, really cool.
Yeah, I can only imagine what this would look like if I had like a way better TV. Like I think of Tim Getty's crazy theater room and be like, oh my God, Tim, can you just like, can we watch it through your TV? Like that'd be great.
Yeah. Can you just do a live stream of you watching it with your like ambient lighting matching the lighting of, because that's also the other thing that like I guarantee there's some program out there that would absolutely sync that film up, and you would have the blues and the oranges and whites kind of like syncing up with what's going on screen. Because yeah, that'd be friggin' insane. But yeah, Cora as a whole, I'm curious what you thought of that character as kind of somebody coming in from as a fan of this series. Because I came in, I was like, oh, okay, she's kind of got this chosen one vibe, sole survivor of this mysterious. Like the one of the other bits of trivia is that the ISOs, their helix structure is a triple helix structure compared to our double helix structure. So it was like, oh yeah, these are definitely something different. And who knows what that's going to mean with her in the real world.
I think
but
that's my biggest
curious
annoying about not having a sequel yet. Is like that's
Yeah.
such a big like what happens when you take this person and bring them to the real world. And the ending shot is just her like finally seeing the sunset for the first time. And
Yeah.
but that's it. That's all we get. And I'm like, it'd be so great, especially like I played the video game to get the backstory on them and to find out all about that a little more. And I'm glad that she got added. It's not. I have no issue with that, but I want more of it. Like if obviously they, and you said earlier, they had a third script written before Disney decided not to do it, which also boggles my mind because it's not like the film didn't make money. It made like I think 400 million, probably more since that in DVD sales and everything else. Because like the first one, it just became a cult classic. And obviously enough that they put a ride in Shanghai and are now copying said ride to Orlando. So maybe Disney? Like I understand because they're like, hey, Star Wars and Marvel make money hand over fist, and that's what we're going with.
Yeah. But even they aren't, as we saw with something like Solo, even they aren't like foolproof. So yeah, maybe they will revisit the Tron well in another few years, and kind of like pick up that story and see where they want to take it. But yeah, so yeah, Cora I thought was an interesting character, and I like that's another like reveal that I think is handled well, because it's clearly it's set up that like these ISOs and then they were something special, and then they got devastated because Clue thought they were going to ruin his perfect system, and the fact that like Cora is like the secret last hidden one is cool, and it's kind of introduced when like she loses an arm and they're able to recover it instead of compared to anybody else who would have taken that injury and then just like completely derezed.
Or like the guy he talks to in the beginning that's just missing like half his face.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, it just cool, and again, just how her design. One of the things that stood out at me, like looking at it, was her bangs. It's a weird like future style that I just don't see all that often. But like she's got bangs, but they're like cut at a 30-degree angle or something like that. And it's just like, okay, yeah, that's a cool little choice to add to this character. And Olivia Wilde. One of the other little bits of trivia out there was everybody else in their digital incarnations has like contacts, except for Olivia Wilde, whose eyes were just like so starkly like vibrant anyway that she didn't need them. So she like it's her natural eyes in that world, and everybody else is kind of has an effect on them to help them seem more digital as a result. But she didn't need it because she just has crazy bright blue eyes. But yeah, any other favorite moments?
The light cycle still comes to mind because it was just amazing to see what they did with the first one and how they turned it completely into something similar but different. And just making that entire battle be a 4-on-4 battle, still the same thing here, but now 3D with the platforms. Because the original one, this goes back to watching the other Disney show. They had a problem with how they were going to make those things turn, and the guy just it's a computer, just make it go 90 degrees. It's fine. It's not going to be an issue. And that they still haven't changed that. It really they changed it a bit in this one where they do have the curve, but you look at most of it, it is wide angles. It's now that they finally got to the point of having greater technology, you can do actual curves and stuff, but to know that the original was everything's 90 degrees. It's just car goes straight, car goes left. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah, I love the kind of the evolution of that within that scene, but then also with the kind of the jet fighter scene at the end, as clearly using that same tech and the same kind of rules apply, where they have like the light streams from the edge of, or from the like the back of the jets, that also will, mess up your day. I thought was a cool little, like, how that translates into the sky, and it's the same tech, and we get the sense of it. And again, just because of the fluid nature of it, seeing one of those things do a barrel roll, and then you see the light stream kind of rotate alongside that, for a couple of those sequences, is just like, this is just really, really cool visually. Even if this wasn't like a dogfight or something that we're seeing, it was just like, it's cool to see the look of those things as they fly through this, dark landscape, the little bright lights shining out there. But then, yeah, throw on top of that you have Sam shooting others down with a turret, and they have to basically fly up to stall to get, the lead on somebody else. Really just cool stuff. And I love really like all of the kind of the vehicle sequences of the film. Like each one of them feels like it fits within this world, but it also feels unique. And I thought,
yeah,
it was really cool.
They made a very good job of
so
making
much,
them unique and different, but all similar at the same time.
Yeah, so much of the film is stuff I've never seen before on screen, kind of thing. It's riffs on things that are commonplace, and like car chases and all that stuff. But so much of it is like, here's a technological experience that you couldn't get in the real world because of the confines of the real world that we're not confined to on the grid. I thought was really cool, and how some of those things are handled and approached. Any moments in this that like don't work for you?
My only one that really comes to mind was the gathering that he was trying to pretty much invade the real world from the digital world. And I get why they did it with the mirroring the same speech that Jeff Bridges had at the beginning, but flipping it to being like, out there is a new world versus in here is a new world. Felt different than I wanted it to be, if that makes sense. I get why, because that's the hook of the movie is like, hey, Clue's you from the 80s and everything needs to be perfect, and this is how everything needs to be, and he's perfected this world, and he's waiting to try and find a way to get out and expand and conquer the regular world, the real world, and make that perfect. Because Jeff Bridges even says at one point, like, the guy doesn't like imperfection. That's why he got rid of the ISOs, because they weren't perfect and can't be perfect. So like, could you imagine what he would do with the real world? Like, that, no way, shape, or form perfect. So like the whole militaristic style was like weird, because it didn't really fit with the original Tron, but it made sense. I wouldn't say it was bad. It was different, and I was like, all right. Like, I get why you're doing that, but not the best part of it to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's what you get from not having like the big bad be Edward Dillinger II or something like that. Not having it be this outside force that's manifesting within this world. The fact that they make it kind of Jeff Bridges versus himself, basically. You see kind of it's very much, it feels like that almost sci-fi trope of the like logic. If you apply logic to these things, the only logical outcome is to exterminate humanity. It's if you take Isaac Asimov's 3 Rules of Robots and stuff, and the film I, Robot, the only logical outcome you get is to save humanity, you have to basically save them from themselves by either enslaving them or eliminating them or whatever. Because otherwise they will continue to destroy themselves. And that's very much kind of what Clue seems to be like latching onto there is he's run the numbers, and humanity will always act against their self-interest. And so he's going to try and fix them. So like it feels like almost well-worn territory seeing it in this sense, but also like it's a pitch perfect kind of like, especially from the 80s, that's absolutely where we thought we were. There's even like a reference to like War Games, that film kind of in there somewhere. Like the only way to like, it's his game, the only way to win is to not play, basically. Kind of a reference to that other '80s kind of cult classic film
Which
about
Jeff
this same
Bridges
kind of
flat out
stuff.
says to him, like, the only way to win this is not play. That's why, like,
Yeah.
I'm stuck here. I couldn't
Hmm.
escape, and I haven't been able to leave because of this. And now he brought you in, and the only way for it not to happen is to do nothing. Which obviously Sam's like, I don't buy that at all. We can go. That whole point, that was
Yeah.
probably another thing that never really made sense to me. Like, the way he explains it makes sense. It takes a lot of energy. You're not going to keep that portal open, but I don't think someone as smart as him would not have had a way to backdoor it if he needed to ever get stuck in there.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. But then you wouldn't
You wouldn't have the
have the
entire
stakes
movie,
of the
yeah. But like,
movie.
so it's like
So yeah.
you have there is some you have to disbelieve some things for it to work.
Yeah, and I think they do a good job of kind of like establishing the rules there that there really was only the one way out, and Clue was basically like, even if he tried to go, Clue had his forces ready on like standby and on high alert to keep him from making it. Because I get the sense that like he before he went out into the outskirts of the world, he was trying to be like the revolutionary. I feel like they kind of like set that up and teased that a little bit, but then when like he gets driven out and basically stops seeing the usefulness of him fighting, because as he fights, more programs die or whatever.
And then
Even
he
throughout
converts
the
him over. So just like
exactly, yeah.
kind of necromancy in a way. The more you kill, the more power he gets because he's just turning them into soldiers for himself.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, he that was another like he by doing that he was hurting his own cause and hurting the programs that he was trying to support and take care of as well. So yeah, like again, I find it so interesting just seeing like less of Kevin Flynn on the screen and more of Jeff Bridges, and just being like, yeah, they clearly like when they were like, hey, we want you to come back for this. It feels like they were like, and you can just kind of come up with whatever dialogue you want. We've got like the beats of the moment, but you can just kind of do your thing. Just given how out there he is with it all, but it also manages to fit in a world where he would have been exiled for 20 years, and that's kind of how he has found a zen-like state of mind, an acceptance of the circumstances of the world. And it also, again, as you kind of touched on, it does a great job setting him up with much more antagonistic Clue, that I think like they have great opposing dichotomies as a result of all that. And you get like hints of it seeded in there when you have like the flashbacks to Kevin creating Clue and being like, yeah, we're gonna change the world, man, and like Clue is very clearly like robotic in nature, but Kevin's still out there like, yeah, this is gonna be fun, we're gonna have a good time.
They evolve in different ways. Like to harken
Yeah.
to a machine learning, and he learned to follow the directive that was given and just make it better. It would, he was a human, and the older you get, the wiser you get, as they like to say. And he just understood what was
Mm-hmm.
more important than all of this.
Yep. Like finding joy in all the imperfections of the world. Well, cool. If you don't have any more favorite moments, I think we can dive into the report card section of the film, where we grade the movie from A+ to F. So what would you grade Tron Legacy here, Michael?
I'd probably give it a solid B plus.
Solid
I
B
don't
plus.
want to say it's like the greatest thing since sliced bread because it does have a
Mm-hmm.
few issues, but for what it did, the original like revolutionized how they made movies and changed so many things for the better and for worse because they talk about
Mm-hmm.
it and they're like, yeah, there are things we did on this that never got done again because they were so terrible on how we did it, but we also invested in technology to do it, which then made things easier for other people. So to see what we started with there to come to here, don't get me wrong, it's a great film. Just we
Mm-hmm.
already talked about the score is beautiful, the graphics are beautiful. I don't think it moved the needle the way the first one did.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. I give it probably a solid B myself, and kind of going off of what you're talking about, I think it has hints of trying to do some of that stuff with 3D, and then also the de-aging, and I would again kind of argue that the de-aging like Tron Legacy walked so that we could get young versions of what Michael Douglas in Ant-Man or something like that in some of those or like Michael Douglas in Avengers Endgame even, and
Robert Downey
like, they
Jr. in
look
Age of Ultron.
Robert Downey Jr.
It was Age of
exactly,
Ultron, right? That he did the back one.
No, I think it was Civil War when he goes back and kind of relives the scene with his dad.
Yes, you are correct.
Yep. Yeah. So and they used even the same kind of technology where it was like, hey, we have visual representative of what Jeff Bridges looked at this time because he's 89 Jeff Bridges. He's not 82 Jeff Bridges from the original film. It is like time passed. He was out there living in the real world and building up NCOM. And they kind of used, reference footage of the films he was in the late 80s to kind of build this version of the character, both Clue and young Kevin Flynn. And we see Marvel using the same kind of stuff in the Marvel movies. So it did kind of like help set the groundwork for that, even if it's not 100% there yet. Or I guess even another one would be like Moff Tarkin in Rogue One. And that one is one, or Carrie Fisher as well in that, where it's like those work to varying degrees of success, but they're still making something possible that was not possible, 10 years ago, even prior to this film kind of thing. And I remember on the Moff Tarkin one in particular, I remember like seeing that in theaters with my dad, and my dad not recognizing that it was like a CGI facsimile. My dad and my sister both were like, God, he's got to be super old. How did they do that? And they didn't, like, if you're looking for it, you can see that there's like issues there, and lighting doesn't always work, and hair. In particular, in this one, it was hair. It was like eyebrows and stuff that just didn't look realistic for me. But so much of it is like, hey, it's passable for 90% of the people who are there to just have a good time and enjoy the film. They're not gonna overly scrutinize every little detail of a lot of this stuff in the way that those of us that podcast or something do. But yeah, so I would say like those two elements, and I think if 3D had continued in the kind of trajectory that they were trying to put 3D in, I think we would have seen more. But I think it ended up being kind of too cost prohibitive, and studios started realizing, well, if we really want the extra money for 3D screenings, we can do we can add the 3D effects in post production, as opposed to like having them integrated into the film from the get go, like it was in this or like it was in Avatar. So
which makes you just wonder, like the next. I mean, probably Avatar 2 will be the next big made in 3D movie that you'll see in theaters, because James Cameron loves that stuff.
Exactly, yeah. So I think like those. I think it had the potential to try and push things forward, and just because of where the landscape is these days, it didn't have nearly as much of an impact as a significantly smaller marketplace back in the early 80s did with the original Tron. You see, I think, more of those kind of technological advancements happening in all of the Marvel movies, or the biggest blockbusters that are getting the money, compared to Tron, which again, Tron had like a significantly sizable budget for what it was, but it didn't. I agree that it didn't necessarily push the needle as much as its predecessor did.
But it did have the plus part of bringing it back into the zeitgeist. Like, absolutely, yeah. If Tron Legacy doesn't come out, I don't see them putting that ride in Shanghai.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, and like it would have just kind of continued being like a cult classic-y kind of thing, I think. Like it was weird enough when it got like introduced into the Disney or into the Kingdom Hearts universe. And so the fact that like that we did get the film and could potentially continue to get new stuff, and especially with stuff like Disney Plus now, I wouldn't be surprised if instead of revisiting a film, if the technology is strong enough and they can kind of continue to make leaps and bounds in that, I could see them doing it as like a limited series or something even, and maybe it's a prequel series or something, but because I don't know if they would get Olivia Wilde back for a Disney Plus series, or certainly Jeff Bridges or any of that. But you could tell stories in the Tron universe that could be cool in a Disney Plus original series or something like that.
Last I knew, most of the cast was still on board to come back for a third. I think the only one who wasn't, just escaping my head right now.
Garrett Hedlund as Sam?
No, it was actually Bruce Boxleitner. He was the one who was like,
oh,
after 2, and they talked about it for years of doing it. He's like, if they asked me at this point, I don't think I would, because he's been going back and forth on it so many times. And after, I'm assuming now, especially with that, finding out that he wasn't part of 2 in the first place.
Yeah, I don't know. I think they could get him back in some kind of cameo role, because again, I don't think any potential Tron third movie or series isn't going to feature too much in like the real world, it seems to me, and it seems like it would be kind of more of a like, hey, here's the opening and closing bits that are in the real world where Alan is the CEO of the company or something like that, and you have him kind of there for a scene or two, but then like the real action starts. But yeah, maybe he wouldn't come back for it. Be interesting to see. Anyway, diving into extra credit, that is the other suggestions of this film, if you like it. Suggestions that came from Disney Plus itself are, of course, the original Tron there from 1982. You have the Tron Uprising animated series. You have The Black Hole and Flight of the Navigator, kind of other live-action Disney films from around the era of the original Tron. You have A Wrinkle in Time, which came out a couple years ago and kind of plays around with time and is a very sci-fi feel film. You have Skyrunners. You have The Mandalorian, which that was one I was like, that's an interesting call. And then Pirates of the Caribbean: The Curse of the Black Pearl, kind of feeding into the live-action films of kind of this era of Disney. Extracurriculars. You watching anything else on Disney Plus these days, Michael?
I just started watching the prop show.
The which show?
I will tell you the exact name of it in 2 seconds once my PlayStation decides to load up. Disney Prop Culture. They just released it on May 1st. It goes through besides Tron, Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, Pirates of the Caribbean: The Black Pearl, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, and he's going through and finding old props and artifacts from that age and showing to people who haven't seen it. Like the one for Tron, he brings Alan Bradley's entire Tron suit to him, and he's like, I haven't seen this in like 30 years. And pointing out all the things, and it was talking about it. It's really good. I've watched a couple episodes of it so far, and that'll be my plan probably the rest of tonight, is to
very cool.
watch those out.
Nice. Yeah, I hadn't heard about that one. I love those. That's one of the like hidden gems, I think, of Disney Plus is a lot of those like documentary kind of series. So it's really cool that they're kind of like exploring the Disney vault and then taking it to like the actors and stuff to go and show them off and be like, hey, what does this make you feel?
And on May the 4th, we'll get
cool.
the one for behind the scenes on all the Mandalorian.
And that's the next one I'm looking forward to coming out tomorrow.
And watching Princess Bride because it's fantastic, and I'm glad that because of Disney's acquisitions, it's on here for me to be able to stream.
Yeah, that's absolutely like I like that. That's absolutely one of my favorite films. So the fact that like I'll be able to do that D Plus show about it here in the coming weeks, it's like, yay, that'll be cool. That'll be a fun one to chat about. I'm trying to think if I've been. I've been keeping up with the Clone Wars this last season. There's like one episode left at this point, and that's been really cool, kind of seeing how Ahsoka's journey ties into the events of Revenge of the Sith. Really cool, kind of seeing like that.
That is something I never got into, but from like everyone tells me like you need to watch it. So it's one of those. It's on my list to go and watch chronologically. Like people say, you need to watch it when I have the time to sit down and do it. Yeah,
no, that's absolutely fair, and it's very much a it There are a lot of misses in the series. I would say like there are a lot of episodes that I'm just like, yeah, I didn't need to see this. I didn't need to spend time with that. But the ones that really hit, and there are a lot that really do a good job of fleshing out kind of the lore of just the war itself, and they do a good job trying to really add depth to a lot of the characters that we just didn't get that much of given the limited scope of the films. So getting to see more like episodes dedicated to Mace Windu or like Yoda kind of leading a charge in battle or something like that are really cool. And they do a good job of kind of establishing Anakin and Obi-Wan as like real powerful generals of the war. One in particular sequence that we talked about on this show a few weeks back was kind of the Carnage of Krell storyline, and it's a 4-episode arc that really focuses in on like a squad of the clone troopers, and you have very little of like the Jedi around for that episode, but it really gives you kind of a sense of what those guys were like compared to just the nameless, faceless grunts that we saw in the film, or in the films, or not faceless because they all have Jango Fett's face, but getting to see kind of how those different clones establish different personalities and stuff. It especially in the context of something like Tron Legacy here, where it's like, okay, it's really cool seeing how these things, which all could have been like just pre-programmed one size fits all things, kind of have different personalities and different wants and goals, in the same way that the programs in Tron do. So yeah, definitely recommend checking it out, but I would not judge at all if you decide to do one of those like catered, hey, these are the episodes you need to watch. You don't need to bother with Jar Jar episodes or...
Well, people, does it jump around? Because the way people made it sound is like you should watch this episode, then go ahead like 2 seasons to watch this one, then come back and watch this.
Yeah, so that's the series started out much more anthological. So it is like, okay, you're going to see this bit of the story, and then a couple seasons later, you see basically a prequel story featuring those characters that got introduced. I don't really... I mean, it's in the same way that, like, if you were to watch the movies now, I wouldn't recommend people watch 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I would watch 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 7, 8, 9, because the language of the films is set up around that. So like there are moments, for example, in the Clone Wars here in this most recent season, where it's like there's tension being built and it's only being built because we know that it is existing at the same time as Revenge of the Sith, and so we know it's only a matter before like the other shoe drops and Order 66 is given. Which, if you were watching this like trying to watch it chronologically, wouldn't necessarily have as much impact, I think. But it's like, so I'm of the like I watch it in release order kind of thing, but there are other people out there that there is a chronological order that they've gone and mapped out and said, okay, these are the episodes and here's the order that they happen if you want to get introduced to the characters, and then you get kind of the continuation of their story, a season or 2 down the line or something like that. You can do that. But yeah, what I was talking more about is there are other kind of catered lists. I think like Barrett Courtney had one in particular that he was trying to kind of push back when they were talking about the Star Wars in Review, where it's not every episode. So it's hey, here are like the 10 essential storylines that you should check out over the course of those 7 seasons. So it's cutting out a lot of the filler episodes. It's cutting out maybe if you don't care about Anakin and Padme episodes or something like that, or you don't care about Jar Jar episodes, it pulls those out of the mix, and so you're really only focusing on here are some of the really cool stories, or here's how they like, because one of the big things obviously is like Maul gets reintroduced in that series, and they kind of, and he has like a recurring, he comes and goes throughout a couple different arcs to explain how he survived Phantom Menace and kind of what he has done in the years since. And so like that's one of the probably essential arcs to check out from Clone Wars. But an episode where Jar Jar is mistaken by Newt Gunray's people or something as like a secret Jedi, and he only gets away with it because he is like clumsily like falling around into like lucky circumstances as Jar Jar does, like that you never have to watch and you're not going to miss anything in the
That's
series.
good
So
to know.
it's that kind of thing is identifying like, hey, yeah, these are the episodes that are really cool and really add something to Star Wars mythos versus these are the ones that are cutesy and fun for like the children audience that the show is intended for. But you won't miss anything by skipping over them or something like that. So yeah, Clone Wars, really good. One episode to go, and then I'm sure like we've already done one episode of that D Plus show on the Clone Wars. I'm sure we will continue to do more as the as the show goes on and as we decide to revisit other certain arcs and stuff. So yeah, check that out as well. But yeah, that's going to do it for this week's episode of That D Plus Show. Thank you, Michael, for joining me to talk about Tron Legacy. It was great having you on. Great conversation. Love kind of your knowledge and excitement for Tron in general. And so if you ever want to come back on and talk about the original Tron sometime, let me know. We can certainly try and schedule that, work that out. You can follow Michael at Sigh of the Torrent on Twitter, and I will go ahead and include that in the links in the description below and everything. Anything you want to shout out or plug, Michael? I know you're not really too much on the content creation side of things these days, but if you have anything you want to shout out or direct people to, let us know.
I mean, they can follow me on Twitch in the same name. I do occasionally stream. It's been a while. The downside of living in an apartment with my girlfriend and her kid is it tends to be a 4-year-old running around anytime I'm playing video games. So that's why I'm like, yeah, streaming maybe not the best idea, but it is something I do enjoy doing. It's mainly a lot of Destiny though, like more Destiny than a person should play, probably. But I do still play it, and until Final Fantasy Remake came out, then I was like, yeah, that's on the back burner because I need to play this.
That's absolutely fair. Cool. Yeah. So follow us, twitch.tv/Sigh of the Torrent. I'll include that link as well. You can follow me at Trevor J. Starkey on Twitter. The plug I would make is, and I don't remember timing wise if it had come out yet last week, but I would plug my Final Fantasy VII Remake review is up and live on thatnerdysite.com. You can check that out. That was a real good game. I really enjoyed it. You can follow all of the latest from That Nerdy Site at thatnerdysite or thatnerdysite.com. And if you'd like to be on this show, you can go to thatnerdysite.com/D+guest, just like Michael did, and fill out a little Google form there, letting us know what Disney Plus offering you would like to come on and chat about. If you liked what you heard, please like, rate, review, subscribe, share with your friends, and all that good stuff. And if you do feel so inclined, you can always support us on Patreon at patreon.com/thatnerdysite. Thank you for joining me, Michael. Thank you for joining us, listener. As always, stay nerdy, be good to each other, and class dismissed.